Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pick Up Korea podcast. And today I have a very special guest, Jack North from thesoulplayer.com. And can you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Jack, like he said, from thesoulplayer.com. And it's very good to be here.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, so I've been in Korea for 10 years and I've been coaching, and Jack has been here how long?
About 11 years now.
Right. So we're literally both like the veterans of Korea who really... Korean game is like our bread and butter, and it's really good to get different perspectives. Like, my view is that you really want to learn from different people, get different views, and apply what works for you. Sort of the like the Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do, right? Like, you draw from all sources and make game and make life your own, like what you want to do, right? So
it's like the MMA of game.
There you go, exactly, like the MMA of game, right? You got your jiu-jitsu, you got your Muay Thai, your striking, your ground game, right? So
and if you ain't got judo, you ain't shit.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. I'm curious. Actually, the first question I'm really curious about is how has COVID-19, the coronavirus, that's the biggest news these days, right?
Sure.
And so what everyone's, asking me, what are you doing because of coronavirus, and how has that affected your game or your dating and stuff like that these days?
So obviously the first month or 2 months or so were a bit harrowing for everybody, not just in Korea but worldwide. But once everybody in Korea kind of got over it, which it seems that they have at this point, right? And they have now for months. Everything it's just going fine. In fact, it might even be going even better because a lot of guys still aren't going out, right? And so whenever you go out, there are girls out. There are always going to be girls out. I don't care if it's the zombie apocalypse. There are still going to be thoughts out at the bar looking for guys, for sure.
For sure. I've even noticed, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that girls, a lot of girls are more free than they usually were. Like we were talking about earlier before this podcast about like flight attendants. We both really like flight attendants because in Korea...
How can you not?
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. I'll explain how you can't. You've been to America. Have you seen?
Oh, okay. Now that doesn't count, and you know it. All right.
Right. Like if you ever take like Delta or something, it's just like really old, overweight flight attendants in Korea.
Or gay dudes.
Or gay dudes, exactly. But in Korea, they literally handpick young, tall, good-looking, women to be flight attendants. So,
8+. You must be an 8+ to be a flight attendant. There are rules.
Exactly. So what I've noticed is like flight attendants. Even this weekend, I met a flight attendant, and they're all grounded. They can't really fly, or even if they are flying, it's very limited. So So those girls that are usually kind of harder to meet, they're a lot more available. Other girls that work at bars or clubs or
that is
like
an excellent observation that I had not considered.
Yeah, even a lot of night workers, they're lower on work these days, or they don't work as much, right?
Sure.
And so it kind of opens the field to like different types of girls that are often harder to meet, right? Because their schedules are a little bit more free, or a lot of the activities that they usually do are sort of restricted right now.
Sure. So I also imagine that they would be even more, I don't know, let's say grateful or excited to go out with a guy who has a bit of extra capital to spend on a nice date out, or on a few extra drinks,
Exactly. They're just excited to go out, I feel like, and then meet people in general. Where it's like before... any day can be a day out, and the clubs and bars were full nonstop. Because Korea, it's like a 24/7
party.
Yeah, there's clubs that are open here until 11 a.m. It's nuts, right? Like there's bars, or you can go to restaurants and they're just nonstop serving alcohol, right?
Sure.
And so now that it's a lot more tame, or a lot of the places in Itaewon, like we were talking about earlier, Itaewon or Gangnam or Hongdae, a lot of these like major venues are closed.
Yeah.
So when you're inviting them out to a drink or something, it's even more of a, what would you say? It's even more of like a special chance or a gift or something they're really looking forward to, as opposed to pre-COVID-19, right?
Yeah. And this also, I think that this can benefit guys who don't live in the main party centrals, right? Because before this, if you lived in Hongdae or Itaewon, then you were golden, right? But nowadays, you meet girls in your local neighborhood, maybe a residential neighborhood, like mine, right? Like, I live nowhere near any bars or clubs or anything like that. But you meet a girl around here, and you can take her out to some of the little local hops, and she's going to be super excited to just be out of the house, be doing something, and you don't have to go out, you don't have to I don't know, drop a few $100s on the night, you could probably get through the whole night on like $40-50 even.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree. I'm actually curious what brought you to Korea, because you've been here even a year longer than me, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first got here, there was a sizable amount of foreigners, but it wasn't until like the K-pop wave really blew up, like the drama, the K-pop, and now the movies are,
Korea booze.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't really happen until about 4 years ago, maybe something like that, a few years ago. And so I'm curious, like, what brought you, since we're both veterans, what was the thing that kind of brought you here?
I mean, do you remember the 2008 financial crash?
Yeah.
So that's when I graduated from university, and obviously jobs were not happening then. So I had a friend who had taught in Japan, and I was like, okay, cool. So I started looking into teaching in Asia, and I got offered a job in Korea, and I got offered a job in Taiwan at the same time. I flipped a coin, it landed Korea, I flew out the next week, and I never looked back. 11 years ago.
Interesting. Have you ever been to Taiwan? I mean,
yeah.
Did you ever go since? How'd you like Taiwan?
I loved Taiwan. It's
great,
fantastic.
Yeah. It is a cool place.
But I skipped Taipei, actually. I went down south. I went down to Kaohsiung.
I've never been there. I've been to Taipei, but not Kaohsiung.
So I landed first in Kaohsiung because the flight was cheaper, and my plan was to go up to Taipei. So I was staying with somebody on couch surfing that night, and the guy and his live-in girlfriend, they were both like, look, just skip Taipei. Stay with us for your time here, and we'll show you around to all the cool stuff here. This is way better than Taipei, I promise you. And I was like, all right, cool. I trust you. So I stuck around there, and I loved it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Taiwan's a great country. I would say, I like the culture and stuff like that. I would say this, though. Korea does have hotter girls. Like, it's just a bigger country.
Yeah.
And it's the appearance is so important here, right?
Yeah.
So you have hotter girls, you have more girls, and the jobs pay better, as far as I know, from what I remember.
Yeah, I think that, at least whenever I looked at it, but again, this is 11 years ago. Whenever I looked at it, the Korean jobs paid more, but based on cost of living, it was functionally the same.
Gotcha.
Where the cost of living in Taiwan was slightly lower and the pay was slightly lower.
So it kind of equaled out.
Yeah, it was basically the pay was kind of a toss-up.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Now it may be different. Who knows? I haven't looked into it in a long time.
Okay, cool. So yeah, actually, I'm based mostly in the Gangnam area of Seoul, right? And you're based more on the northern end, which we call Gangbuk, or near the Hongdae area, right? So that would be kind of an interesting topic, because I do move around. I go to Hongdae sometimes. I go to Itaewon. I go to Gangnam, the whole, Shinsa, Apgujeong, all these kind of places, right? So an interesting conversation would be the differences, right? So what are the differences that you notice or have experienced when you were gaming, South River, I guess it would be translated, right?
Yeah.
Gangnam and North River, Gangbuk.
Okay, so the biggest differences that I've noticed are on the north side, girls are more receptive to whatever you're saying. They're more willing to hear you out and give you a chance, let you ramble, let you run your game. But on the south side, a little bit less so. However, on the south side, they are super responsive to any sort of, I hesitate to use the word peacocking, but you know what I mean. Any sort of extra-ness about yourself. If my mask is it's a cat face, or I have a hat with a fish on it, or I'm wearing a tie-dyed t-shirt, or something like that, and they will respond to that. And in fact, I've had a lot of girls in Gangnam open me because of something that I was wearing, or because of a way that I looked, things like that. And so that doesn't normally happen in places like Hongdae, but it does happen in Gangnam. However, whenever I approach a girl in Gangnam, her defenses are so high, right? Because she's so used to it. She's a 9. She's used to guys coming up and approaching her all the time. Whereas in Hongdae, the 8s think that they're 6s, and so it's golden.
Yeah, that's true. That's one thing I notice is when I'm approaching wherever, say it's Shincheon or Hongdae, the North River areas, I feel like the girls are so much more receptive, because in Gangnam you're used to, if you're approaching really hot girls, they have such a shield, right? Yeah. And then you go to the North River, it's almost like a different country, it feels like. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, they're responding right away. Yeah. I'm used to having to melt down the shield a little bit and then kind of get in there a little bit. Yeah. Whereas whoa, it almost it catches me off guard sometimes when I'm in the North River, right? So yeah, I think that's one advantage of this area. The advantage of Gangnam is that you just have high quality girls everywhere, though. although they have a lot of shields and stuff like that, but like if you're in Shinsa or Apgujeong or Gangnam, like you get like models and actresses and all of these sort of like hostesses, and it's just full of those a lot of those kind of girls
for
in
sure.
that area. Just different types of girls in different areas, right?
Yeah. I was actually down there about 3 weeks ago, down in Apgujeong Rodeo, and I went out just with one of my buddies, because he lives down in Bundang, and so we just met halfway, like in Gangnam area.
Sure.
Right? And we were just going out to sit around and just have some beers. CU beers, kind of walk around, just hang out.
That's what I did Friday in Apgujeong Rodeo.
But here's the thing is that I ended up getting 5 numbers because 5 different nines approached me.
Oh, nice.
And now, I know that here on the podcast, right, you can't see this, but like when you look at me, you're like, no, nines don't approach you. But they do when you kind of put on a special persona, and whenever you just genuinely don't care, right? Like, I'm not interested in them, and they can feel that, and like they came for me, which is it was shocking to me because it's been a couple of years since I've even been out to game in Gangnam, and I was just blown away because I was like, okay. Because I know I'm getting older and I'm not getting better looking, right? Like there's no way that I should be having better results now than I did, say, 5 years ago. But I think it's a lot of like, maybe it's inner stuff, maybe it's mindset stuff, maybe it's outward stuff, like appearance stuff. I don't know what it is, but there was something very different there. Because I don't get that same thing if I go out drinking in Hongdae. If I go out drinking in Hongdae and I don't want to talk to girls, I'm not talking to a single girl. You know what I mean? Right.
I think you make an interesting point is that, like in the Hongdae area or Itaewon, you have so many different looks and like it's more unique. It's more American in a way. That you see different styles and you see. Whereas like in Gangnam, there's like one. It's more of like the Korean mainstream, like looking a certain way,
the zeitgeist,
a certain fashion, a certain plastic surgery. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas when you move to like Hongdae, it's more eclectic. It's more artsy because that's the art university, and then Itaewon's more of the international. So you get like people from different countries and Korean girls who lived in Australia and things along these lines, right? And so that definitely plays a big factor, I would say, for sure. So my general advice is to go to all areas, like because there's guys who only game in the one Gangnam main street, or guys that only go to Itaewon every weekend. Whereas I think it's very beneficial to go check out different areas and sort of draw from all streams and kind of find out what kind of girls you're interested in, because you'll find out very quickly, like once you meet a bunch of Gangnam girls or a bunch of Hongdae girls or whatever, you'll find the areas that you resonate with more. But then it is still good to like mix it up. Like one benefit of gaming is that you can meet several different types of girls. Like that's why a lot of guys are in this, right?
For sure.
Or to meet the one girl eventually that you're really into. But how do you know that unless you met many different types, right? So
I still remember my first serious girlfriend, and I was dead convinced that I was going to marry her for sure, right? Because I had nothing to compare it to. I had nothing to compare it to, and so by going out, I mean, thank God that I didn't marry her, right? But by going out and meeting different types of girls, by seeing what meshed with my personality and what didn't, it's very helpful. Now,
totally agree.
I don't mean to steal the interview from you, but I have a serious question. Is it just me, or does Gangnam Station, like Gangnam proper, does it kind of suck? Because I've tried going there probably 20 different times, and it's just been garbage every time I've been.
So, okay, the thing about Gangnam Station is that a lot of it's like the times, right? Like, so if you go there at like 6 o'clock, it's just flooded with so many people. It's jam-packed. So there's so many different types of people to approach just because you have so much volume, right?
Sure.
So I would say it really depends on the times that you're there. That's one thing. So you can go there at certain times and it's not very good, and then you go there at certain times, it's just like, the quality is off the chain. Like everywhere you look, it's like there's an 8, there's a 9, there's a 7.
Well, I've tried going out for like night game, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, night game. Honestly, in Gangnam Station's, in my opinion, it's not that great. It's not very good.
Well, obviously we share that opinion. So our opinions.
I would say it's good for day game. Night game, it's sort of. I would say that. The venues aren't that good. It's not, Itaewon and Hongdae have much better venues. Traditionally, the really, really good spots in Gangnam to go out at night are now closed because of COVID-19.
Sure.
Which were like the high-end clubs like Arena and those kind of places were just full of super hot girls. They're not even, they're closed now. So.
Well, Apgujeong was still going a couple of weeks ago. Whenever
Apgujeong's good right now.
Yeah.
That's the place right now. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one was still going hard. Like I didn't see anything closed. Now, depending on your style, right, it may not agree with you, that general area, because like for me, I walked into one place and it was advertised as like a bar club. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a club, but like it's kind of got the lights, but it's still a bar, right?
Okay.
And so I went in there, and the only beer that they had available was a Budweiser for 11,000 won. And I was like, no, I'm not, no. Or ordering bottles. And I'm like, again, no.
To be honest, I think Apgujeong has some really nice fancy pochas and venues right now, but I still think the best spot there is just on the street at the convenience store, because you get all the girls walking by, and they're all going to the different pochas and stuff in the area. And a lot of the pochas, if you go there after 11, it's there's like a waiting list. So what I've been doing, this is kind of funny, but what I've been doing is I hang out at the convenience store and drink, and then I walk by the pochas, and the girls are just around waiting to get in to have food and drinks. And I just pick them up on the street while they're in, they're not really in line, they're more on the waiting list, so they're waiting for their name to be called. And it takes like an hour apparently. So like you can just scoop them all up before they get into the venue, Which is like, it's perfect because you're not paying any money to go into these venues, and you meet the hottest girls that are waiting to get in. So that's sort of what I found to be the best,
So have you ever had any luck in pochas or hofs? Like, I mean, inside, once you go in, not on the waiting list, right?
I would say not these days because I don't go to them that much. But back in the day when I first got to Korea, I learned a lot of game from Korean guys. Like, I had some Korean guy friends that were really good.
Interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I had a couple friends that were like naturals, and they were really good. And that's where I learned a lot of what I do now is based on what I learned back then. Because I was sort of like a scientist. I was experimenting, like, because when that's one question I do want to ask you, is that when we were learning back then, this is 10 years ago. That was like when the game was popular and like mystery method was kind of popular, RSD and all this kind of stuff, right? And it just wasn't really congruent with Korean society.
With Korea,
or
period.
With Korea at all. Like, in fact, I would say it actually gets you worse results trying that stuff than even just doing random things, I would say, right? And so back then I was trying to figure it out. Like, I even remember I read those books and I was like, oh, I'll try it out, and it just didn't like pan out, right?
No, it doesn't groove here.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I just had to kind of. I had a few friends, and we'd sort of exchange notes, right? We would make little challenges for each other. Like, okay, let's try this, and we'll try that for a week and test it thoroughly. Like, oh, I'm noticing this result. You're noticing that result. And oftentimes our results were very similar because we're doing kind of similar things, right? And then I made a couple good Korean friends who were like naturals, and learned a lot from them. So at that time, I did get some okay results from pochas. Like, we would pull together from pochas. But one thing that sucks about pochas, which is why I kind of stopped going to them, is it's almost assumed that you're going to pay for their food or drinks. A lot of them even have a system where it says, like, if you join tables, you have to pay for the girl stuff.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so I was like, wait a minute. So I realized that it's a lot better to just meet them on the street outside of the pocha. Or another way to do it is, chat them up, get their number, and then meet them later in the night. Rather than going to the table and then drinking and then having to buy all that stuff, right? That could be a good experience in the beginning just to get your social skills up and to learn group dynamics and stuff like that. But, after so much time, like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, There's other ways to do it more efficiently.
For sure. Group dynamics are an interesting thing because I meet a lot of guys who maybe their game is pretty solid, but they don't understand group dynamics very well. And so they're so scared to approach a 2-set or a 3-set or something like that, which always blows my mind because if I have the choice between a single girl or a 2-set, I would always rather take the 2 or 3-set.
Okay.
Because I don't know, and I know that this plays to my personality type, but I'm more of an entertainer type, and so for me, if I'm talking one-on-one to a girl, then if she's letting me talk to her, I'm at least at a maybe. Right? I'm not at a definite no. If we're talking...
If she's at least responding.
Exactly. Then I'm at a maybe, right? And now my job is to convince 100% of my audience that I'm a yes. But if I'm talking with a 3-set, then I'm a maybe with all 3 of them. My job is only to convince 1/3 of my audience that I'm a yes. Because if you convince one, man, this country and their herd dynamics here, if one of them says yes, the other two are yeses for sure, right?
Right.
And now all of a sudden you can see like, okay, I'm talking to this group and I can pinpoint, okay, you're the most interested in me, and so I can play something to you, or I can play a joke off your friend onto you, and then you're going to go yes immediately, and then it flips the whole group.
Right. I think it's what it is they're like, some guys just don't have the experience doing it, or they're afraid. It's intimidating to approach 2 or 3 girls, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very
how do
important.
You get the experience?
Yeah, you have to go in there. Exactly. That's what we were talking about earlier, is that's why I think it's good to go to different areas of Seoul, talk to different types of girls, talk to single girls, talk to groups, right? That way you can, you'll be comfortable. If you do that, you'll know what you're into, and you'll be comfortable in all the different situations, right? So it's very important. One question I was going to ask you to kind of go back a little bit and unpack it was, we both got to Korea, and I kind of mentioned that I had a friend, and we would shoot date off each other and experiment, kind of like mad scientists in ways, right? And I had Korean guys that I learned a bit from. But for you, and obviously we mentioned that the game can be so different in Korea compared to America and the whole, Western pickup methods and stuff. So for you, how did you learn? And then also, like, what did you notice that was different from America? I'm very curious about that.
So much trial and error. That's how I learned. Like, whenever I first got to Korea, I mean, I know that most people, especially guys in Seoul these days, like, they're not going to believe this. It took me 6 months to get laid. 6 months. Now, I was living in the middle of nowhere, and it was 2009.
Okay.
Right? And so, like, it was a different thing altogether. But
me too, though. It took me months, actually.
Yeah.
When I first got here, it was just very confusing.
Right.
And it was very frustrating. That's why I think we both got here kind of at a similar time, so we really both had to do trial and error. And there's nobody like Jack North or me, Kether. There's nobody at the time, actually, that was, like, in Korea that would get results and could actually explain any of this. So well, and so that was actually my impetus to start the site back in 2015. Nice.
Is because I thought to myself, like, man, I've spent the last 6 years just fail, succeed. Okay, let's try something different. Fail, succeed, and then eventually I hit like a Malcolm Gladwell tipping point where it just went fail, succeed, right, over and over and over. And then I was like, okay, so clearly I've got something figured out here. Now let me help give other guys a shortcut so that maybe it doesn't take them 6 years. Maybe it takes them 6 months instead.
Right. Exactly. I agree. What were some things that you noticed that were different, like when you got to Korea, that kind of stood out to you? Like, because you had been in America before, and I'm sure you've dated or had some experience with girls back then, right? And then you got here. What were some things that you're like, wow, this is just totally different? Like, because as we both mentioned, we're both sort of frustrated. We both had to kind of experiment, right, and trial and error. What were some things you were like, wow, this is, much different?
I mean, I got here and literally every other foreigner is at least as educated as me or more. Right? And so the idea of like, oh, well, I am educated, I am well traveled, things like that might be somewhat impressive in a place like America or Europe, where it's like, oh yeah, I've been to this many countries, and somebody's like, oh, that's so cool. I also remember when I was 21, right? Like, it changed it because the things that I had been relying on before for some kind of social proof or validation were now just, that's the bare minimum to just be here. And
good point. Okay.
Right. And so then I had to figure out, I mean, I was 23 or 24, right? Like I had to figure out who I was. And that took a while, right? Because when you're 23, you're a kid. You don't know shit about shit. You don't even know who you are, right?
Right.
And so like having to do that kind of like introspection of like, well, who am I? What type of person am I? Who do I want to be? And then once you figure that out, okay, so what kind of approaches, what kind of discussions, what's going to work for me, what kind of venues are going to work for me, right? Because who you are can't just be Well, I'm an alcoholic English teacher. Right?
Because it is kind of the
base, right?
The default for most
Yeah.
people here.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, there has to be at least, even if you are an alcoholic English teacher, you still have to be something more, something extra, figure out who you are, figure out where your strengths are.
Sure. I mean, that's an ideal world, right? Like, I think both me and you have that approach.
Well, it was a far less than ideal world, I promise.
Yeah. I mean, you know, for guys like us, we want to sort of figure this out. We're motivated to learn this kind of pickup stuff or dating, how to improve our dating life, which then in turn, as you mentioned, it's sort of, I describe the process, it's kind of like inner alchemy, where you're, because girls will kind of reflect yourself, right? Back.
Sure.
So it's like, oh shit, I'm talking this way, or I'm coming off this way. And so it's sort of this process of like trial, error, repeat, reflect inside, you know, sort of inner alchemy, change your personality in a way that, not change your base personality per se, but like it's sort of maximizing the you, who you can be kind of thing, right?
The way that I like to explain it is that like the actual personality inside you, who you are, that's like a gift, right? It's like a gift in a box. And now, and then you need to change the wrapping on the box.
Exactly.
Because you're not actually changing who you are, but you may be changing even something like your mindset, how you view yourself.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the actual thing, but it is going to change the way
you behave or interact, though.
Yeah, sure. So maybe it adds some luster to your gift box, and maybe you can add a ribbon, things like that. Like so, all this game stuff. This is all about like how to better package what you already have, how to better explain and show what you already have. I mean, obviously, you're not going to walk up to a girl and tell her the worst things about you. Like, because why would you? Why would you walk up to her and be like, you know what, listen, 2 weeks ago, I was almost in the hospital dehydrated because I had diarrhea. Like, you never open with your negative sides, right? Even whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter, right? Like, so you still want to open with the positive aspects of yourself. You want to learn how to package what you are into a more presentable box. And that's really the whole goal of game, of all this stuff, is like learning how to talk to somebody and get them to see the things that you see in yourself. But in order to do that, you also have to be able to see yourself.
Exactly. So that's why this whole thing can be kind of really like a odyssey of the mind and the soul in a way. That's kind of the way I view Pick Up myself, right?
Sure.
And so, it's an interesting journey if you decide to take it, I think, right?
Yeah. But I'd say it's worthwhile. Right?
Yeah,
I'd absolutely say it's worthwhile. And even, let's say that you get whatever your end goal is. Let's say that you meet the perfect woman, okay? You get married, you're perfectly happy. Then can you just put the game down? Can you put down all of the stuff that you've learned, that you've unpacked about yourself? Never. Because it's so critical, right? And most people who don't do this stuff, they never bother to do that, right? You meet a salary man who got married at 19, high school sweetheart or something.
Right.
He doesn't know anything about himself.
Exactly. And oftentimes it'll take something like a midlife crisis or getting divorced, and then it's like they're trying to play catch up. Like,
sure.
Oh, now what? You know, like.
Well, maybe we just had our quarter life crisis instead. Exactly. We had it early.
Got it out of the system early. Exactly. So some other things I think are interesting that, like I mentioned, we both kind of have different perspectives, different styles. We both game in different areas, right? However, some of the stuff, you know, obviously we'll have different opinions on certain things, but there are some certain things I've noticed that we both came to the same conclusions of, which are some pretty fundamental things. Like, I remember back when I first got here, there was like another group who they were like, they claimed to be this like Asia pickup group.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was like this mystery-based group, and what they were saying...
Let's not mention the name.
Yeah, let's not mention... they who shall not be named.
Yes.
Right? However, what they were mentioning in all their like group meetings or blog posts or whatever was like, you have to get a girl's number and just text her for years or months, and like even if she's not replying because neediness does not exist in Korea, right? And so I was like, wow, this is pathetic. And so what I remember, I came up on your site and I read a couple of your posts, right? And you hit it on the head on one of your posts, and I was like, yep, this is exactly right, because back in 2000, I think it was 2012, I had a friend of mine, Mr. A, we shall call him, right?
Sure.
And we, as I mentioned, we ran data off each other, and we both came to this conclusion, like, whoa, we had a mind, you know when you like, I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you're like, it's almost hard to sleep because you just had this like big breakthrough or epiphany. You're like, and your synapses are firing.
Right.
And you're like, holy shit. It's like mind blowing, right? At the time, everything's a new journey, right? And so we came to this conclusion that like, we went from like banging one girl, or having like one reg per really long season.
Sure.
To like all of a sudden there was like a month where it's just like, whoa, he had like 15 and I had like 8 or 9 or something. Yeah. And then, we both had like all these different girls we were dating, open relationships. But like, what was the big thing? It was basically this, that we found out that when you get a phone number from a girl, you really only have like within a week, and it's not even really a week. It's more of like, you call it, I think you call it like the 3-day rule. Yeah, you called it the 3-day rule, but we came to, and we came to the conclusion, this is in 2012, that it's basically like, to be liberally it's 4 to 7 days. Yes. You called it 3 days. That's being really strict. Well, but it's basically right. It's basically right.
I use that because, like, in America, the old school thing was the 3-day rule was you don't call. If you take a girl's number, you don't call her for 3 days.
To not look needy.
Right. Yeah. But here it's the opposite. And that's why I kept the nomenclature. Yeah. But what I did find out is, like, in that post, I went into detail on it. Mm-hmm. If I met a girl within 3 days, so let's say that I met her on Saturday night, I took her number. Right. Okay, then if I meet her on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, then my chances of getting laid were about 90%.
100%. That's it's not 100% you're going to get laid, but 100% to what you said. I totally agree because I actually ran the data. Like we were running data sheets back then.
That's what I did as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we were like, so it's interesting that me and another guy and you and some other people.
Totally independently.
Yeah, all independently.
I didn't even know you.
Yeah, exactly. And we all came to the same conclusion that you get a number, and then if you meet them literally within, like we said, it was like 4 to 7 days. Your 3 days, which is, it's right on the cusp.
Right.
But
so what I saw was within 3 days, it was about a 90% success rate. Yeah. 4 to 7 days, it was about a 70% success rate. Sure. But 7 days or more, it was about a 30% success rate. Right. Like it fell off magnificently.
Yeah, exactly. I would say even after 7 days, maybe 30%. But then the longer you wait, like say it's 2 to 3 weeks, it's over. It's over. Like 1% or something like that, right? And so that's one thing that like I still get results from like really old numbers, right? Like I've had ones where it's 5 years ago I got a number. Sure. I had one last year. It was 9 years. She was 20. I ended up closing her at 29 years old. This is literally, I got her number after being a year in Korea. And it's like, obviously that worked out, but is that the majority? No, that's like 0.01%, right? Yeah. So clearly the way, if you want to get results, if you want to get lays, or if you want to have girlfriends, like the sooner you meet them, that's going to be, you got to strike while the iron's hot, basically, in Korea, because the numbers just fall off so quick here.
Right. Okay. And so whenever you wait for too long, then that's going to happen. But actually what I was going to point out is that you just mentioned a minute ago that like, if you want to get lays or if you want to get a girlfriend, then it actually is the same thing because you're not going to get a girlfriend if you can't get lays, right? Like,
That's exactly right. So there's people who say like, I only want a girlfriend or I only want this, but like you really got to master the process first. You really got to, as we mentioned, discover yourself, kind of figure out the dynamics of the situation, and then you're going to be in a good spot to actually get a girlfriend, right? And the thing is, if you want a girlfriend, you actually need a girl to meet you. And they're not going to meet you if you're texting these old numbers that already fell off. Like, you might get one meetup every, now and then, but it's not going to be consistent enough that you can learn anything about girls or yourself. Or
and also you're not going to get a girlfriend if you don't, like you said, strike when the iron is hot. Like you have to go for it. And now if you decide that you say like, okay, well listen, I want to take it slow with this girl. Okay, that's fine. Maybe. Although every now and then there have been times that I've set like some of my lady friends up with a guy and they were like, what's he waiting for? Like, I'm ready to bang. Like why is he dragging this out? There's no need for this.
Exactly.
But regardless, let's throw that to the side for a minute. Even if you want a girlfriend, the only way that you're going to get a girlfriend is if you have those skills.
Exactly.
You can use those skills to get laid. Like you can use them to have a one-night stand. You can use them to get a short-term relationship, a fling, a long-term relationship. But the skills, no matter what you're looking for, the skills are all the same.
It's all the same, exactly. And basically, it's like giving you the skill set and you decide what to do with it. Like I've coached guys. I've coached a guy who got married. I coached a guy who got a kid. I coached guys who are in exclusive monogamous relationships. other guys who have several girlfriends, other guys who are only doing one night stands. Everybody has different goals, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so it's like you give them the skill set and then they decide what they're going to do with it, right? It's like sort of if I taught you how to design websites.
Sure.
You could design...
Pornhub.
You know, yeah, there you go. You could design that. You could design, you know, some sort of export business where you export T-shirts. I mean, it's on you and your goals and your interests, right? Yeah, exactly. But giving you the skills of, you know, WordPress or HTML or what have you, that's kind of like what we're doing in this field, I feel.
So
like,
one of the things that I do whenever I'm coaching a guy, the very first thing that I do whenever I first meet them on the first night, because my coaching sessions are weekend long. We start on Friday evening at like 6 p.m. And we do Friday evening and then night game, and then we do all day Saturday, and then we do Sunday as like a recap and like a little bit of extra street game, right?
Nice.
But on Friday evening, the first thing that we do is we sit down and we say like, okay, let's do a little self-introspection. Who am I? How would I rate myself in these different categories?
Yes.
Second, what are my goals? Who do I want to meet and why? Third, that person, imagining that ideal person, right? So this ideal girl who wants to meet me for this ideal thing, to meet my goals, what is she looking for? And how do I rate on what I think she's looking for? And if I'm short in some category, what should I do to change that? Not what should I do, what will I do to change that?
Right.
And so we're focusing in specifically on the goals, because I like the idea of teaching general skills and basic skills that they can take anywhere. However, if I'm going to coach a guy for a weekend, what I really want is I want him to focus in super hard on like, okay, this is the type of girl I want to meet. This is what I want to meet her for. Be it a one-night stand or a long-term relationship or like whatever you're looking for. This is the type of girl. This is what I want to meet her for. And let's figure out how to tool my skill set, my personality type, so that I can meet this goal that I'm looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. I ask very similar questions too, like what are your long-term goals, short-term goals, what kind of girls are you into, who do you think you are, what kind of person do you want to become? I think we ask some very similar questions, which is interesting.
Whenever we're done with the recording, I'll actually show you the notebook where I have all my exercises and stuff.
Nice.
We'll trade notes on that. Yeah, we'll trade notes on that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously we've come to some conclusions. Like, for example, we just talked about the 3-day rule, and as I mentioned, we kind of called it the 4 to 7 day rule. 4 to 7 day rule back then. And what's interesting, I've been all around the world. Like, I've been to Europe and I've gamed. I've been to America. And what really, like, tripped me out when I was in Europe is, like, I would get these numbers, and they would still be texting and wanting to meet, like, 2 weeks later.
Sure.
And I was like, whoa, it, like, blew my mind because I'm so like sharpened to Korea or adjusted to Korea that I was like, whoa, the laws or the law and dynamics of game change depending on the culture oftentimes.
It's super different depending on culture.
Yeah, exactly. So what were some like things you had to overcome? I would say, like, everyone has challenges they have to overcome. Were there any specific things that you like a tough challenge in this process that you have to overcome personally? My
biggest challenge to overcome was thinking, I thought that numbers were important, right?
Okay.
Like, so I used to go out whenever I first got here, right? I would go out maybe 2010 or something.
Okay.
And I would go out specifically to collect as many numbers as I could. Some nights I would go out and I would bring my guitar, right? And I used to think that this worked amazingly well because I would bring my guitar, I'd gather a crowd around, and usually like up in home day, so it's usually like 19 to 22-year-old girls, and then I would just pass my phone around the crew, and I'd be like, hey, everybody, go ahead and drop your number in, and we'll all hang out later, right? Something like that. And so I would go home with 60, 70 numbers some nights.
Okay.
And then I would spend 3 hours the next day shooting messages, like even just copy-pasting messages. It still takes a long time.
Blasting them all out.
Blasting them out to like 60, 70 people.
Right.
And then I'd get like 3 responses.
Right.
Because
I see what you're saying.
Because they weren't invested. I had no idea, because I thought if a girl gives her number,
that means she's interested. Right.
But she wasn't, right?
Right.
And so
you have to really troubleshoot your initial interactions.
Exactly.
Basically. Gotcha.
So even though I thought that I was being successful, I was being extraordinarily unsuccessful. Like if you look at it percentage wise,
right.
I was like down in the knots, right?
Right. Exactly. That's one thing is like a lot of people here. That's another difference for sure in Korea. Is a lot of girls will give you their phone number, but it doesn't really mean anything.
No,
like,
it means nothing.
It's just like sometimes it means go away or like here it is and they'll block you right away.
Sure.
Right? So that's why what you're saying is like learning how to express yourself properly, read the girl in the situation, gather some investment.
Sure.
Those things, the dynamic of, in pickup terms they call it D1, which is nerdy, but it's the dynamics of initially interacting with people that become really important to develop and learn, right?
I've literally never heard that term. Obviously,
it's a cheesy, corny term.
Yeah, okay. This is not part of my world.
Right. It's a nerdy forum terminology, right?
So what I usually do to get to that point whenever I'm meeting a girl, and this is an easy trick that anybody can use, is that like whenever I first meet her, right, we're talking and I finally exchange names. Hey, by the way, I'm Jack. Let's go ahead and play this out. I'm Jack.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm Gio.
Okay, Gio, so nice to meet you. Right? And then we're going to talk for a little bit. We're going to talk for a while, and then eventually, whenever I say, like, oh, by the way, Jiyoung, go ahead and drop your number in here, and then we'll hang out later, right? By the way, Jiyoung, stop. Quick test. What's my name?
Jack.
Okay, good. Now I know you're invested.
Right.
Because you remembered my name over the last at least 3 minutes or so.
Right.
And if she doesn't remember, then I say, nope, take the phone back, say, wait.
Right.
You can't have my number yet. Not until you remember. I'll give you a hint. 4 letters, starts with a J.
Right.
You only got 2 choices there, right? Like,
right. A lot of it's basically getting investment and compliance, right?
Yes.
Like getting them to invest in this interaction, getting some involvement or engagement, and then also getting a little bit of compliance. Like, what did I say? Okay, enter here.
Exactly.
Let's go over there. Let's go here. Now we're here.
You've got
one thing leads to another, right?
So
yeah.
So compliance is. By the way, for you listeners out there, if you have not read Influence by Robert Cialdini, I highly recommend it. Because,
good book. I've read it too a long time ago.
Yeah, he goes through, and he's mostly focused on like salesmanship and like things like that. But the way that he terms it in his book is he calls it compliance professionals. He doesn't call them salesmen because he also looks at like religious people and things like that. And listen, guys, this stuff is 100% applicable, not just to game, but to everything you do in your life. Anything where you want somebody to be doing what you want, which is every part of life, right?
Sure. I would call it like he calls it influence. That's a really good term, I think. That the ability to talk to somebody on the street and bring them home or meet them later on a date, that is influence, basically.
Sure.
Or the ability to close a sale. You're persuading or you're influencing. It's a very similar psychological process.
Or the ability to go into an interview that already has a set pay, and then be like, well, but 15% more. Right?
Exactly. That is the art of the game, basically. It's influence. It's influence.
It all ties together. It's not just with women. It's all aspects of your life. And everything you do when you're interacting with another person, there is some form of influence or persuasion always going on all the time.
Definitely. One question I'm also interested is like, why do you think that there might be a lot of listeners who come across this podcast? Why Korea, or why meet Korean girls? What about, I don't know, Philippines, or what about, wherever they might say, right?
I mean, to be entirely honest, it all does come down to taste. If I had to rank like East Asian countries, I don't know enough about the Philippines, right? I haven't been there, and I can't rank like the island nations, right? But if I'm dealing with East Asian countries, Chinese girls have the biggest boobs. Japanese girls usually have the best faces, but those teeth, bro, fucking jaws. Anyhow, Korean girls have the best overall package, and also I'd say that they're the kindest of them. Like they're the most understanding and amenable. They're willing to follow you if you're a good leader, and if you're willing to show them, okay, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, this is the thing, this is just what's next. And they will follow you.
I agree with what you said.
I think that the Chinese girls are like a bit too there's a bit of, I don't want to say rebellious nature, because it's not quite that, but almost American style, like, no, I'm not doing that just because you said so.
Yeah, it's a little bit more direct in a way, I feel like, right? So, yeah, that's why I would say the same thing. Like, if you're in East Asia, like in Japan, one thing that I don't like about Japanese is they like hide their emotions.
Yes.
They're not, like a lot of people that are in Japan, they feel alienated because there's less emotional connection there.
Sure.
And, you know, it can be very robotic in the way that people interact and the way the society's set up.
And
Whereas in
I've
Korea,
heard
you feel like you
I've heard they can
very
be
well.
quite two-faced.
Right. That's another stereotype for sure. But like in Korea, you feel like you can actually, there is emotional connection, there is emotional expression in the culture.
For sure.
It is almost like, it's like Asia, but mixed with like some Latin aspects. Because you have a very, like if you ever watch like, because I'm part Mexican as well.
Yeah.
If you watch like novellas and then you watch Korean dramas, there's like a lot of similarities. Whereas
they're identical.
In ways they're very identical. But when you watch like Chinese or Japanese drama, it's like another, you know. It's
actually,
like,
Lady North loves La Reina del Sur.
Oh, there you
right?
go.
She loves the Queen of the South, right?
There
because
you go. Nice.
It's the same, right? It's the same as Korean dramas.
Exactly. So I think that's a benefit of Korea for sure. And then, as you mentioned, I think that's true. Like China has some definitely, you know, it just has a big population, so you're gonna have a lot of like, but then some super hot chicks. Or like in Japan, definitely there's good makeup, some good faces, but like less of the full package. I feel like. Whereas Korea is sort of like. Korea literally is situated in between China and Japan, so I feel like they kind of get the best.
The best average.
Yeah. They get like some of the cool things from Japan, some of the cool things from China. It's like that's my view on it. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
The other thing is that just the overall average of looks in Korea is, I mean, at least from an American perspective, it's probably about a 7 to an 8.
Right. Yeah, from an American perspective.
From an American perspective.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that I can't say the same thing about Japan or China.
Right.
When I'm talking about the overall average.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in China, you have the same thing that you have in places like America. Like you essentially have the Olympic syndrome, where if you're just looking at the far end, when you're dealing with 1.2 billion people, then the hottest hot girls are gonna be so hot. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I view China for sure too. And I think both those countries, though, I mean, that's not to say you shouldn't go to China or Japan. You really should. You should go check those places out. They might resonate with you more, too.
Sure.
And they both, I think all the different countries, I mean, whether it's China, Korea, Japan, or European countries or American states, perhaps, they all have trade-offs and benefits and pros and cons. So, yeah, definitely check it out. But I think we did pretty much, like, summarize what the pros of Korea are and why it is really, really worth checking it out if you've never been here before.
Korea is just, honestly, like, you said you've traveled a lot, and I have too, and we both decided to settle here. Yeah. Like, from my perspective, there's no better place in the world to live, right? It's not a great tourist country. But
unless you're like, what did you call them earlier? Korean bows?
Oh yeah, Korea boos.
That's right. Yeah, unless you're like really into the drama or the music or something like that.
If you're really drawn to like specifically the Korean culture for some external reason, then fine. But just as like a general tourist, this is not a great tourist country. But it's an amazing place to just live.
To be, exactly. Yeah. I totally agree. Anyways, it's been a great interview, and people can check you out at
thesoulplayer.com.
Right. Okay. So this is. I think we could probably do a round 2 another time for sure.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you guys are big fans of Kether, then come and join us at the forum.thesoulplayer.com because Kether is also a member on the forum.
How can they find the forum?
Well, you can go to forum.thesoulplayer.com.
There you go.
Or if you go to the website, it's one of the links on the very top of the page. You'll find the forum. I promise you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely check that out. And signing out until next time.
Next time.